It is my pleasure and indeed my honor to welcome you all here to our cathedral today for our memorial mass for Pope Francis. We're so grateful. So many have gathered. It's good that we come together and pray at a moment such as this, especially for our Catholic family, but also for the whole world. I especially want to thank so many representatives of our interfaith community present with us today. We're so gratified by your presence, beginning with the Executive Director of our San Francisco Interfaith Council, Michael Pappas. We also have with us Lauren Nemirovsky, the Assistant Director of the Northern California American Jewish Committee. We have retired Air Force Colonel Deborah Dacumos, who is the Board Secretary of the San Francisco Interfaith Council and also San Francisco Veteran Affairs Commissioner, along with her husband, Kenneth Eisen. A welcome to Reverend Canon Eric Metoyer, who is the Deputy to the General Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of California. Reverend Joe Williams, who is the Successor of Grace Cathedral. And Sister Kayoto Kimura and Sister Sukanya Belsare of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center. And Imam Nail Shakur of the San Francisco Muslim Community Center. I also want to extend a grateful welcome to Matthew Grudeau, the Deputy Chief of Staff from the Office of Mayor Lurie. I know we have school children from the Archdiocese with us as well. We are so grateful and gratified by your presence. It's greatly appreciated. I think the presence of such a diverse group of people here at what is an act of Catholic worship is indicative of how all religious leaders who are prominent on the world stage exert a moral influence beyond the confines of their own faith community. Certainly for us as Catholics, that's the Pope, but we as Catholics also look to leaders of other religions who are prominent in the world and in our country for moral guidance. People of all faiths and no faiths look to prominent religious leaders for moral guidance in their lives. We were looking for a day to celebrate this Mass during this 9-day period of mourning we have in our church from the day of the Pope's funeral, then for 9 days beginning then, trying to pick a day that had some significance. So we landed on today. Today is, in our Catholic calendar, the feast day of a sainted predecessor of Pope Francis, Pope Pius V. Not only that, though, but also because, as you may know, Pope Francis, instead of being buried in St. Peter's Basilica, where the popes for more than 100 years have been buried, chose to be buried in the Basilica of St. Mary Major, a few miles away from the Vatican in the city of Rome. A significant church for us is the first church in the western part of the then Christian world of the 4th century, dedicated to the Mother of Jesus under the title of Mother of God. As we know, we always prayed there before and after he made a journey. But he will be buried nearby the tomb of his predecessor, Pope Pius V. This presents for us then an interesting and I think helpful juxtaposition. Pope Pius V led the Catholic Church in the middle of the 16th century. As you know, that was a very significant time in world history. Seismic shifts were happening, political, social, and even economic. It was a time of what was considered to be a splintering of a unified Christian world, which ushered in the historical anomaly of wars of religion. It was also the same time that Europeans discovered parts of the world existed that they didn't know about before and began to explore them, as well as other parts that they kind of vaguely knew about, which was made possible by advances in world travel, now with the ability to circumnavigate the globe. So they began exploration and colonization, which of course led to cultural exchange, but also cultural conflicts, and also wars among the European powers themselves fighting for hegemony over those parts of the world. The world at this time is when it started to become smaller, what we now call globalization. With these advances in travel, people around the world began to know about each other's cultures more. Trade became more possible. Yes, there were conflicts and human rights abuses, but there was also more of an awareness of the wider world that was out there. This, of course, that was 500 years ago, almost 500 years ago. This has now come to full blossoming. Imagine the world that we live in now, with the ease of world travel. We can be in one part of the globe one day and the next day on the other side of the globe. Means of communication are possible now that were not thought possible in the lifetimes of people who are still alive today, such as myself, for example. So, ability to speak to anyone, anytime, anywhere in the world, and even see each other live on a screen. Communications are made possible in other ways with technology for translation services. And then, of course, there is the instant contact through social media. This, of course, carries dangers as well as benefits. We all know about the problem of misinformation. Most significantly in my mind, though, is that it gives greater possibility for the human encounter. We all lament and are concerned about what we hear about constantly, the polarization in our society, hostility, people canceling each other out who disagree with them. Nonetheless, I still believe much progress has been made over the centuries. We can compare where the world is now to where it was 500 years ago. I think this is perhaps the greatest lesson we can learn from Pope Francis: the primacy of the human encounter. The encounter with the other as a fellow human being. Everyone has to live by some sort of a belief system. Everyone has their own beliefs, and they believe that those beliefs are true. This is natural, this is logical. It's good for one to believe that their beliefs are true, and that the values that come from those beliefs are good. That is not the problem. The problem is the attitude, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and so everyone who does not agree with me must be silenced and pushed away. But it's also possible to have the strength of one's conviction and still know that I have a lot to learn from the other. That learning from the other can give me even deeper insights into my own beliefs and a deeper understanding of what is true. This is when the human encounter happens, when I value the other for the sake of the other. Even going beyond simply understanding, trying to understand what the other thinks and believes, but to know and understand the other as a fellow human being. It is this that makes possible the building up of love, solidarity, and a more civil society. And in doing so, we follow God's own example for us. In our Catholic faith, we have a series of readings for each day of the year, Sundays and also during the week. Today we heard from the Gospel of St. John, what many Christians consider to be the most beloved verse in the whole Bible. That God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that everyone who believes in him might not perish, but might have eternal life. This is the revelation of who God is. God is a generous God. He gives us his all. God giving us his all, giving us even his own Son. That sets the pattern of self-sacrificing love, making an oblation of oneself. That self-sacrificial love is the truth of what God created us for, because in this way, loving in this way, we can know the truth about ourselves, and we can know how to live in a way that leads to communion. That is, that I don't look to the other for what I can get out of that person, or as someone to dominate, or someone to take advantage of, or to beat into submission. Rather, I make a gift of myself, a gift of love to the other, so we can understand the truth and be brought into the light. As this passage from the Bible we just heard, the Gospel of St. John, that whoever lives the truth comes into the light. It begins with that human encounter. I'm so grateful to the San Francisco Interfaith Council that models this kind of love and communion. There's certainly no more appropriate place to model this than here in San Francisco, which has always been a melting pot of people from different cultures, different nationalities, different religions, different value systems, different socioeconomic background. It's very appropriate that we can model this here. This is what the San Francisco Interfaith Council has been about for nearly 40 years now. It began as a group of clergy and lay leaders who came together under the request of the mayor of San Francisco at the time, Art Agnos, to provide additional shelter and meals to the homeless during a very wet and cold December. A number of faith communities came together to do that. That legacy continues on with the Interfaith Cold Weather Shelter Program, sponsored under the auspices of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. And in so many other ways that the leaders of the faith communities come together for the good of our city. I want to thank you all, and in particular to thank the Executive Director, Michael Pappas, for leading us in this way. You do so much to keep us united and working together, even amid the differences of our beliefs and sometimes even value systems. There's a deeper level, though, of human communion, that when we cooperate for the good of the other, it brings out the best in us. It makes love possible. This is the lesson I hope we can all learn from Pope Francis. The human encounter, which seeks understanding in the way of that self-sacrificial love. This is what leads us in the way of truth, light, and a more humane society. Living this lesson is the greatest honor we can give to his memory.